We can get right into it, Dave.
Okay, unmuted and share screen. Okay, let's see. Okay. Let's see. How do I get out of, oh wait, that's how I get out. Yeah, okay. Let's see, okay. There. Okay. And before I get into a talk, I just wanted to show this. Let's see if I can move this down. Okay. Just wanted to show this website. Oh, it's not. No. Can you hear me or not?
I can hear you. I don't see your screen.
It says you.
Yeah, it says you've started screen sharing, but it has not completed. It may be an internet speed issue.
Okay. Let's see. Wait. Okay, there's a. Your screen sharing. Okay, okay. Finally, it showed up.
Yeah.
Very good.
Okay, I just wanted to point out this website, and I'll send the link out. But we were trying to get a couple of local observers up to speed on what we do for mobile and multi-station deployments, and so I gathered all the resources I knew about and put them on this one website to give them one place to go to, and with lots of references and all. First, and I have a couple of, just one main section here, and then a couple of subsections, one on specialized devices that have links, shows pictures of the different things, and so forth. And then there's finally, we talk about future developments of trying to automate the whole process of multi-station deployments. And Alex Knox gave a good presentation at the last IOTA meeting about that, last year's meeting. And I mentioned a number of other directions, of doing things, at least facilitating the work, if not actually automating it. With that, I'll leave this and try to pull a PowerPoint. This is the wrong one. I want to get this one. Okay, and we want to go to, I think that's the, yeah, okay. So this is, I call it Occultations by Binary Asteroids and Some Other Unusual Occultations. So I want to point out, I showed a picture here of in 2009, we had a very successful observation of an occultation by the asteroid 234 Barbara after the IOTA, or before the IOTA meeting in Florida. And we got this interesting bilobe shape of that object. And so this is one asteroid I think we should continue doing campaigns on, or at least flagging for more interest. But this is just an outline of the talk. I'm going to have several events here, but I'll just flash through some of them because we're running a little short on time. So there are other asteroids with satellites besides Arecibo, which is that are also of interest that I think we also need some follow-up on. There are also other asteroids with unusual shapes and different things, and I'll also talk about 3 events that I published in the last JLA where we had problems with the Gaia data. So let me just go on. There have been 2 occultations observed by 2258 Viipuri. I don't know exactly how to pronounce that, Viipuri or something. And both of them showed a small moon, 2013, and then recently in Europe in 2014. This the first one was observed in California and Nevada, and then in both cases, the time bases were carefully checked and there were no problems. So this is just to point out things. And then let's see now, the previous one, let's see, I want to go previous. Yeah, well, this is in 2018. This is wrong. I have the wrong date here. It's you look here, it's on February 2018, September 19th. So this is not a recent event. So I'll have to correct that slide before we post it. But then on Valentine's Day this year, there was another good observation of a secondary event, but you know, they didn't have quite the strong confirmation that we had with Arecibo, where we had 2 observers getting 2 occultations. In this case, there were just 1 observation on the main object and 1 observation on the satellite. But again, the timings and everything were checked. But these and other events are, in general, when we the reporting for satellite events like this, we want to prepare a CBET to let the general community know, but also follow up with an article in either the Journal of Occultation Astronomy or the Minor Planet Bulletin would be good, and encourage, of course, follow-up observations with rotational light curves and large telescope adaptive optics like the VLT, and of course, certainly more occultations. So I want to point out that Arecibo is a great example of the way, you know, IOTA should do the work, where we have, you know, some people, especially in the professional community, they cherry pick and they only observe occultations which are pertinent to certain space missions or certain other research goals and so forth. But then we have people like Peter and Dave Galt, who observe everything they can with their equipment from fixed site observatories. And if you do that, then you can make discoveries. If you just observe a few events of special interest, you're going to miss those. So we need people like them doing that. But then we also need surgical strike teams like Kirk Bender and Richard Nolthenius to go out and chase an event for follow-up observations. So people willing to, you know, throw down different things that they're doing and put their equipment in the car and travel out 100 or 200 kilometers to get a good event to get a confirmation. Anyway, so just sort of going and let's see what. Okay. So anyway, this particular event, I also give some JOA references. The latest issue has this event discussed there, because there were 3 occultations in one night that observed. Going back to 2014 or 2020, March 28th, we had this occultation by Caprera, and we knew the prediction was uncertain because the event had a high RUWE. So I asked Dave Harold to calculate, you know, could other star catalogs give a different prediction, and he calculated the UCAC4 prediction was far to the south of our area. So we decided, the Gaia data must be better, so to speak, but with this RUWE value, we knew it could be off. So Ted Blank and I set up multiple stations, and Joan and I and Ted Blank. And he set up to the south and we set up to the north, covering out to at least 2 sigma in both directions. And only Ted got the 2 hits on it, showing where the real path went. Then we had, this was in the time of data release 2, and after that, the early data release 3 came out, which showed a different path, shown by the yellow lines here, that were in much better agreement with Ted's observations. But even it, the new RUWE value for the 3rd release was even higher than DR2. So there's still a problem with the star that hopefully with the final or the later releases of Gaia will bring that down to something reasonable. But it just shows that you really have to watch out for that. Anyway, this just shows the sky plane plot. And I also discussed in that article about Apophis occultation with NY Hydri, but I'll talk more about that in my next talk. Another event we thought of interest was this one that we did in 2020, where we got a nice elliptical fit to 7 of the observed data points, but we had 1 point way out here, and and we double checked and triple checked our timings, and they're rock solid. This was really out here. It wasn't down here or something. So, so this looks like some sort of strange peanut-shaped object, and it doesn't look at all like either of the 2, dominant models for this asteroid, which are pretty blocky and roughly spherical. So this is another one I think we should look out for. This is just one I threw in an occultation by Ganymede that we observed actually just the very next night after that Centesima event, showing a 7th magnitude star that was occulted by Ganymede. Of course, Ganymede's in the news recently with the recent Juno flyby, but this shows that was a fairly well observed event actually, in spite of the altitude and twilight problems. But then in 2021, February 21st, I just put this one in as an event that we used as a practice run for the March 7th Apophis occultation, and that it had somewhat similar statistics from what we expected after the radar observations for Apophis would become available. And we showed, in this case, the prediction was pretty good, but we covered the full ±1 sigma range pretty well, and to make sure we got it. But this shows the sky plane plot, and I do point out here there was also an EV scope observer near Vallejo, not too far from where original Athenius and Kirk were observing the Arecibo event. But it was, and their chord was almost coincident with our southern chord and unistellar. At first they said it was a miss, but said, well, it couldn't have been a miss. You were right on top of us. And so they're still analyzing that. So I think it's just a little too beyond the capability of their, or at least make it difficult for them to analyze. And that another event that was concerning a double star, which had a separation of only 0.3 of a second of arc. The Gaia team could not tell whether if we would have what the position was in the Gaia catalog. Was it for the primary star or a blend of the 2? So we tried to cover both circumstances and set up several stations, and it turned out the prediction was pretty good. Assuming it was the primary star and not any blend. So again, this is all discussed in the JOA article, and I'll just go on showing one interesting observation was made by Salvador Aguirre down in Hermosillo, Mexico, where he got an occultation not by the main star, but of the secondary star, the fainter star. It was great. He was able to pull out this fairly short grazing event that he had with that other star. And then another event sort of like Senecima is one recently done by Tony George with this asteroid 6519P, Palomar Leiden. That's PL stands for. It was a thing done in the 50s to try to find more Trojan asteroids, but they also picked up a lot of main belt objects as well as Trojans, and this happens to be one of those main belt objects in spite of the name. But I think this gives, has a double event, which indicates a shape that I think is more like Barbara. This is one I think we should look out for. The magnitude drops in both cases were very large, showing like Arecibo analysis that I think a double star explanation is less likely than the peanut-shaped asteroid. But anyway, this just shows the summary of the 3 problem cases that I discussed in the JOA article. It's discussed there, so I won't talk about it. It just gives the RUWE value. So it's just, you have to be careful. And now I'll just mention briefly, we tried that June 30th Arecibo event from 4 stations. So we were glad the Californian observers were so successful. But we had clear skies, and it's unfortunate though that we made a mistake. We spread our equipment too thin. We could have had a couple of good solid results if we had concentrated on just setting up 2 or even 3 stations rather than 4. But all failed to get good data for different reasons. Some of our equipment is wearing out, and the effort just took too much work. And Joan and I are getting older now, and we just can't, do the things that we used to be able to do. So in the future, we're going to concentrate our efforts on training others to run mobile and multiple stations, rather than try to put out as many stations as we can by ourselves. So probably just limiting our efforts to 2 or 3 stations at the most for a given event, but always trying to get others to join us. We did have 3 other observers who accompanied us, just saw what we did for these observations, and in spite of the failure to really get good data, they were enthusiastic about the prospects of doing more. So anyway, we had another event recently with a nice bright event, 9.7 magnitude, rank 100, but in this case, we bailed out because the weather was too poor, but we did get 2 observations on it on opposite sides of the center. Steve Messner and Henry Throop, Henry here and Steve Messner here, both had misses. And in this case, I didn't check, but Steve Presson had a note saying hi RUWE, and I just didn't even look at that before this event. Always check those notes that he gives. And so I asked him about it, and he says, yeah, the RUWE was higher than 5. So these things keep being a problem. You have to keep checking those. Maybe by the later Gaia data releases, there will be fewer and fewer of those, and they will get better solutions for the asteroids, or the stars, I mean. And in summary, I think we should keep looking for future occultations by some of these unusual objects that I mentioned, but we shouldn't forget such satellite possibilities in odd shapes for binaries, like some other previous events. Hebe Lucina, Cleopatra is a very strange shape, of course. Maybe Herculina, and Psyche is good for NASA missions that they're doing. So I'm sure others will have suggestions for adding to this list of some of the special objects now that we have pretty good orbits for more of these things. We can concentrate some of our mobile efforts on the more important events. So that's the end. Are there any quick questions before I go to the next slide? The next talk. So,
I think you should go ahead, Dave.
okay, I'll do that. Okay, here's the next one. We will go up to the beginning and show.